So this can be a fun one to respond to. 1,200 stops or 1,300 stops or whatever it is. Like a lot of guys will flex how much they do in a day, thinking, oh, look how much I get done. A lot of that means nothing to me without any context. When someone says, oh, I have 1,200 stops today, there are scenarios where I would rather run 1,200 stops as opposed to 300 stops, depending on the context. And so I might get a little long-winded because it's, story time. I can tell you of a lot of different examples. But if you had that many stops in like a contracted community, major metropolitan area, where every cart is set out, almost like this, I would almost call this 10 out of 10 cart placement. But let's say the contract was the lid is shut and the cart is down to the street. No cars are parked on the street because there's a policy on trash day where cars are not allowed to park on the street. And everything is nicely spaced, lid shut, and you can service it quickly. Yeah, you could do 1,200 stops if you have every house. And the routing is easy because what we call it is breadcrumbing. It's hard for us to train some guys because not every stop is right next to the other. So breadcrumbing would be, it's kind of a referral to, what's that folks tale? Hansel and Gretel? They go out in the woods and they leave breadcrumbs to follow back home. Well, if you have every stop or every house, it's easy to find your next stop because it's just like the next house over or right around the corner. For us, when we route these, we'll route these as efficiently as possible, and we're trying to get good density. And I would say compared to 10 years ago, what Columbus is, the density for a route has improved a lot. And that's a different story. But if you have more stops closer together, yeah, obviously it's going to be easy to get more stops done in a day. So when I tell people, like, yeah, I got routes that are 600 stops or 800 stops, some are like, oh, those are baby routes. I run 1,200 stops. It's all relative. It's all context. If it's contracted, or if you work for a city that has a tax-based utility and they pick up every home and the lot sizes are smaller, yeah, bro, you can knock out 1,200 stops in a day, no problem. The communities of Columbus, Norfolk, and Fremont, Nebraska, as I understand it, they're all in a contractual agreement. I think they call it the coalition, where they all kind of dump at the same landfill based on a contract. That's why all three of them have rules that any trash picked up within their community has to be dumped at their transfer station at their tip rate so that they get the revenue, and then it all goes to the contracted landfill. So those three communities. Now all three of those communities all have a same structure where they allow private haulers. So if you want to run a garbage company, you can get a garbage truck, you can get a permit with the city, you can start signing up with customers. The problem with that model is your first few months are going to be atrocious to your budget. New garbage company starts off, maybe they sign up like 40 or 50 customers. So for several weeks or months or however long, you got to be willing to work your second job and then run your trash routes while you build those up. And you might not ever break even or turn a profit. So it's a dangerous model. And that's where a larger corporate entity can show up and purchase them. Sanitation has been around since I think 1985 when Mitchell's dad bought it, and it's been a slow burn, but we've grown it, or Mitchell's grown it. He's bought some routes and expanded it a little bit, so we've gotten better route density. So for us to have routes that are 700 or 800 stops in a day, to me, that's really impressive, because 10 years ago, my understanding of Columbus was Columbus is hard. It's a very tough place to run trash routes. And I may get into that later on in this video. But I kind of want to go back to the idea of context about 1,200 stops, or 600 or even 300. I should tell you about a person I know named Roger. So someone like Roger, and I say this, like I'll tell people, everyone's got to know a Roger. Roger's the kind of guy that, if it has a motor, he can drive it and he can fix it. Make sure there's no one coming. And I used to work with him at a different company around Fremont, and he would have routes that were the rural routes. And I'll tell you this, I would much rather run 1,000 stops in Fremont than the 300 or so stops that he would run on his routes, because they would send them down these country highways where it's like, okay, we have a contracted community of like 300 people or 500 people or whatever. Pick up that community, and then there's all these farm places on the way there or outside the community that want trash service as well. And here's a funny story. The shop manager was complaining, not to me, but near me, that, oh, we bought these brakes, the heaviest duty brakes we could possibly get for this truck. They're supposed to last for 6 months, or I forget how long it was. It's supposed to last a long time. And keep in mind, the brakes on garbage trucks are going to wear a little bit faster because you're hitting them like 1,000 times a day or more, right? Doesn't it make sense? You got a big, heavy commercial truck that is accelerating, braking, accelerating, braking, accelerating, braking. They're going to go through brakes. So he's like, yeah, they said these brakes are the heaviest ones we got. They're supposed to last 6 months. And he's like, Roger's burning through them in 30 days. 30 days, Roger burned through his brakes. This guy's driving like a maniac. And I was like, guys, look at his route. You send him out to like 2 or 3 contracted communities that have like 100 stops each, or 200 stops. And then you have him picking up all the farm places in between. So if he drives 300 miles in a day across 3 or 4 counties to get to all these little country stops and communities, and then he's got to drive all the way to his landfill because he doesn't dump at Fremont because it's outside their contracted, boundaries. They take it to a landfill with a cheaper tip rate. So you'll send them another 45-minute drive to a landfill to empty the load. Of the 300 miles he drives, there's going to be probably like 100 of those miles that's just gravel roads. And like the time frame is so tight that, like, I think there's one time I got sent to cover his route, and they sent someone else in a different truck to pick up some loose stops or some other like outliers, because they knew, like, if I wasn't trained on the route or if I didn't know it well, that it wasn't going to get done. Because like Roger's got to be like driving balls to the wall for like 12 hours straight just to get it done in time. And that's a guy knowing every stop, every curve, every little hiccup. Whereas like when I'm running it, I have to stop the truck, get out these map books and flip through the map books that are like the county maps showing where these stops are at. So every time you do that, you lose 3 or 4 minutes, and you do that, 40 times, all of a sudden you, like, boom, you're 2 hours behind. So they had to send 2 trucks out to cover that route. Like, there's just no margin of error. And again, you would grab the route sheet, because there's no tablets, it was on paper. The route sheet would maybe have like 300 stops listed on it. And one of those stops would be like, oh, the village of whatever. Pick up 70 or 80 stops here in the village or whatever. So it might have 300 stops, but maybe you would cycle it more than that. It's been a while. All I know was if you were handed a route sheet in the morning that had 600 or 700 stops in the city of Fremont, that route would be infinitely easier than the route sheet that had 300 stops across the country or across the rural routes. So it's all context, right? So when someone's telling me they run 1,200 stops, I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. I don't know what that means. Give me some context here. But yeah, like if you go back to this guy complaining about the brakes being burnt out, it's like he's going down gravel roads, just kicking up. He's got to be going like 60, 65 in a cab over garbage truck down gravel roads, pumping like all this dirt and dust into those brakes, and then slamming on the brakes when he gets to the farm place he's got to service, drive up a lane, tip the trash, drive out of there, and then like race to the next stop. It's like, of course your brakes are burning out. Look at the route you designed. Like, it's not the driver, it's the route. Because like that guy, like the whole reason I explained Roger's mechanical aptitude, like he understands how these things are like built. He understands where wear and tear occurs. Like, it's not his incentive to tear up the truck he has to sit in for 12 hours a day. So it's silly to blame the driver in that scenario. There's definitely examples across the country where you hire somebody that has no experience operating heavy machinery and they beat the piss out of it. That definitely happens. But I in that scenario, it's like, I don't know if you guys are fully appreciating the variables here. And another example is like there's a trailer park in one of these communities that when you talk about 1,200 stops in a day, yeah, that's easy to do if you can cycle more than 120 stops an hour, which I've done videos showing how quick this truck can service a cart. Like, you could push it to 180 stops an hour if everything was set up conveniently. I'll link one of those videos in the description if it's a YouTube upload. But when we were training, when I was at this other company and they wanted to train a new hire with the side load, they had a trailer park that was contracted to pick up every stop. And the reason I emphasize contracted was you can stipulate how that trash is going to be set out, and then the person that hires you to run the contract has to go educate all the homeowners about the trash policy. You'll see me running stops here in Columbus where I'm grabbing stuff outside the cart. I'm carefully juggling a Jenga trap. Sometimes I'll pull the brake and get out and pick up trash that fell. We do a little bit more than usual. But at this trailer park, the contract was every trash can has to be set out, past the cars or past the parked vehicles. If they overfill it and the garbage truck grabs it and shakes trash off the overfill, the driver's not getting out. Basically, the rule was trash has to be set out a certain way. The operator is not getting out of the vehicle. So imagine a neighborhood which looked like a couple of number 8s all stacked together. Like really easy streets, real easy loops to run. Everything's set out as the contract specifies. Alright, gotta catch this up. Hold on. Everything is set out as the contract stipulates, and the driver does not stop the truck. Like, it's just cycling as quick as he can get to the next stop, and it's a trailer park, so your lot sizes, or the sizes of the lots, are small. So every can is close to the last one. Yeah, you could tear through, I think it was like 300 and some stops, but you could get that thing done at a pace of like 150 stops an hour. No problem. It's just it was as fast as that packer could go. Because every once in a while I would run it, and you would outpace your packer. So the arm would have to like stop moving, so the packer could catch up. Go, let this car pass. They figure it out. Come on. Gotta get turned around. Need you to go around. Okay. But yeah, like the trash, like those trash cans were so full and so close to each together, it'd be like someone taking, too big of a bite and not pausing to chew their food. It's like, you gotta slow down. You gotta let this thing catch up with you. So, yeah, I mean, 1,200 stops. I guess that could be a healthy route. Like financially, it could be a healthy route, but it kind of depends on the price per, price point. What's your revenue per cart? I know there's communities around Nebraska that if they're contracted, like we're charging $28 per month for trash service, and you'll see that like there's a lot that goes into pricing, but it's dependent on like what's your tip fee, like what's it going to cost us to unload the garbage, how much trash gets tossed out. Not a lot of recycling is done in Columbus, so everything that people use and discard goes into their trash. So since there's so little recycling, and we do offer it, but since there's so little recycling, there's a lot of tonnage that goes into the garbage, and we have to pay for that. And we pay for it at a higher rate. So trash gets expensive. So $28 a month is supposed to kind of cover that. No, I left those lids shut, but I remember those. Those were the ones I was explaining. 10 out of 10 placement. Yeah, I did get those. I like to leave lids open because it shows that they've been done. Every once in a while you'll get someone set it out after you drive by, and if the lid's closed, then I know, like, oh, they set it out late. Anyway, so $28 a month, but we do a little bit more. We'll grab trash outside the cart. We'll take a little bit more time servicing overfilled containers, and it just covers the spread as far as how much weight there is to throw away or to pay for, and how much more time we spend at the stop. And you might think, like, oh, you spend, instead of 15 seconds, maybe we'll spend 25 or 30 seconds at some stops. That might not seem like a big deal, but scale it out, it is a big deal. But there's communities out there where if, like I know of one where the city administrator is kind of the enforcer for the rule. And last time I checked, like it's been a few years, but that community, every resident was paying their city or their little town. They weren't paying the garbage service provider. So, the garbage service provider would go into the community and dump off a bunch of carts for their utilities guy to go distribute them to every household. And the rule was, the trash has got to be set out correctly, and they're not going to take any extra, because the contract had it set up where the community would pay for the disposal fee. So the operator or the driver would have to come into town, go scale at the local co-op or CVA, which is like a CVA would be like a Central Valley Ag, a place where all the farmers bring in their grain to dump off at their silos. And there was a scale there. So, they would scale in empty weight and then scale out loaded weight, and then the city would be billed for the trash disposal. So the city administrator would know every household that was setting out trash outside the cart, and they would call them. Like, these would be their neighbors calling neighbors saying, hey man, don't throw your trash on the ground, because it's contracted that the trash service provider is not going to pick that up. And the city doesn't want to pay the higher fees for more tonnage. So the trash service provider would only roll in, tip the carts, and get out. It's like, you're not getting out of the truck to pick up any extra garbage, because the city doesn't want to pay for the extra weight. But the trade-off is, I think the price point was maybe $15, maybe 12. I can't remember. It's been a while. Maybe it's like $12 or $15 per cart or per household. And maybe every once in a while one would add 2 carts. But it wouldn't be like a $12 cart and a $12 cart. It'd be at a reduced rate, because the truck's already there. So servicing the second one's not a big deal. So yeah, instead of paying $28 a month, they were paying maybe $12 or $15, almost half the price. But they get a lot less service. That's the trade-off. So again, going back to, oh, I did 1,200 stops today. I don't know what that means. You know, it kind of reminds me of Indiana Jones' line, where what's he say? It's not the years, it's the miles. You know. So when someone's talking about the stop count, it's like, well, it's not necessarily a stop count. It's the hours. How much time are you spending behind the wheel? Because like Roger, like if he had a little bit of a breakdown, his 12 hours could turn into 14 hours really easy. And it's like, well, you only did 300 stops today. It's like, well, context, you know. In those rural stops, I know like eventually some of them were getting out of it. Some of these trash companies were getting out of the rural stops because they realized, you know, if it took 5 to 10 minutes for, you know, maybe it was like 5 minutes to get from one stop to the next, driving through the country, it's like you'll never make money. Like if you're bouncing down gravel roads, shaking all the hydraulics and hard frames of those garbage trucks, just beating the crap out of them. Like you break down once and all your profit margin is gone for multiple years. Or if you get stuck. Like if you're going to a stop and you get stuck, it costs like $500 to get towed out of it, you can go to that stop for the next 10 years and you'll never make your money back. Like your profit margin is so small, it's like you're not making money doing this. But there's some guys that it would drive me nuts, because I was like still relatively new to trash. So like they would be talking about like how much market saturation they have. Like, oh, you know, look at this big map on the wall and all the potential customers on this map across all these different little rural communities, plus the main one in Fremont or Norfolk or Columbus. You know, someone might say we have like 32% of the market. You know, 32% of the customers in this area are ours. And that's the majority compared to all these little local mom and pop operations that they're competing with. I was like, 32% doesn't mean anything if like 10% of them you're losing money going to them. Like they were always talking about how they're short on cash to like pay for repairs. And then they would incentivize the shop manager to be under budget. It's like if you're under budget, like you're allotted so many thousands of dollars per month to pay for repairs, you know, the hydraulic fittings or tires or whatever. And if you're under the budget, you can get a performance bonus. And it's like, that's stupid. That is so dumb. You're incentivizing the guy to cut corners on maintenance so you can save money, as opposed to, I don't know, maybe charging what your trash service is worth so you can actually make a profit. Like, I'm sympathetic to the idea. Like, there's people out there that say, well, it should be a community-based utility that's paid for by tax dollars. That's fine. Like, if you want to do that, that's cool. And in a lot of ways, I'm sympathetic and almost prefer that model. But that's not how it works in these three communities. So if you want to set it up where, you have private businesses being built off of a profit model, you might want to start looking at your trash pricing to see if there's actual profit. Because some of these companies are dying a death by 1,000 cuts, and I've described that before. But some of these trash companies don't die from one problem or one issue. Like they're running one week and then they had a oopsie and next week they're closed up shop. A lot of times it takes years of just slow hemorrhaging of money. Where it's like they're making it but barely, and their price point's like right on the razor's edge, and you get a little bit of a hiccup or a little bit of resistance. I've always argued that if someone's stopping the garbage truck to get out and perform janitorial duties at someone's driveway, I'm gonna catch those up. They pay them to get out and be a janitor. So instead of tipping it and servicing the stop in the 15 seconds that it should take, it's like, well, he's going to get out and it's going to take 45 seconds, but we're not going to charge. So we're going to increase the service time and increase the weight of the trash that we picked up because he's getting out to pick up trash off the ground because the cart was full. You've just knocked out all the profit margin that was already tight. You've knocked it out based on the increased service time. And yeah, maybe you do that for one stop, one time, not a big deal. But if he does that for 50 stops of like 800 stops, and you do that every day, guess like it won't kill you that day, but several weeks of that habit, it's going to catch up. It's just going to be a slow bleeding wound that never gets treated. I've been on a route where I had a little oopsie, a little cut on the finger or something, and it bleeds for a little bit. You wrap it with a paper towel, and then you go, well, I'll treat this later. That's a tricky one. I'm trying to like visualize the scenario and verbalize it while doing that. My brain don't do it too good. But if that wound just kept bleeding and I never stopped it, that could be a problem over time. Same thing with garbage companies that are like profit based. And I haven't worked. This is where if I was doing a little bit better with our content, where I had the ad revenue to kind of pay for bigger projects, I would travel. I have been in a scenario where a private company was contracted to come in and service the contract for the whole community, but I haven't been one where the community itself pays for its own trucks and employees. And I'd like to see how something like that's set up, because there'd probably definitely be some efficiencies that are obvious in that scenario, which would be great to catch for content. But I really can't afford to do that. Like, I don't want to start doing those things because it's so much more time. Like driving somewhere, making connections, riding along in a truck, setting up cameras, and then having a whole bunch of content, even more content to edit on top of what I already have. Time-wise, that's just real intensive. So yeah. Anyway, so it's all a matter of context. 1,200 stops, 700, 800 stops, 300 stops. It all depends. We'll run a few more, and I'll have to go get that camera down. Yeah, see, when I drive by a container, that's because it's not ours. No, that's one of those things that reduces your route density. If you have multiple haulers in a city, you don't get the efficiency of a route. So there might be some profit on that container. That little weight, that little amount of trash, it's gonna be light. Like if every stop I had was like that, I'd be able to fit 1,000 stops on this truck. Oh, more than that. I'd fit 2,000 stops on this truck. But in reality, this thing will probably get close to packed out by, 480 to 500 stops. But yeah, if we don't have every stop, and there's competitors in town, yeah, you lose efficiency. And there's arguments against that too, because now you have to have two garbage trucks going down the street to pick up trash. And if we're both offering recycling, then you'd have 4 trucks driving down the street. 2 trucks from each company to pick up trash and recycle. I know of some areas where you'll have 6 trucks driving down the street. Trash, recycle, and yard waste from 2 different companies. So that's not necessarily very efficient either. Well, it's a low branch. You're gonna have to replace the lens cover on that one. Alright, well hopefully that gives you a rough idea of like when you see like how many stops are picked up, it's like what does that even mean? Context, I need that.